Alright kids, so with the retardation out of the way, today we're going to be going over what's commonly called bounding. And we're going to be going over breaking contact. What I like to say is that kind of the basic idea is for all small unit tactics are you're going to fire, then you're going to maneuver. You're pretty much going to say the same thing here. You're going to have a guy firing, you're going to have a guy maneuvering on your bad guys. Big red, right? Pretty easy. So for the purpose of this, the green squigglies, my amazing artwork, it's going to be your concealment. The black boxes are going to be cover. Now the difference between cover and concealment is that concealment hides you, but does not stop bullets. And cover stops bullets. It can also hide you. 9 times out of 10, it's gonna hide you, unless you're behind, like, I don't know, plexiglass windows or armored windows, or you're assaulting an armored window factory. And it's not so much concealment, and it's just cover. But we're gonna assume this is cover and concealment. And then this green stuff is just concealment. So you see you got you and your buddy here. There's bad guys up here, right? So first we're going to go over the limitations of bounding or fire and maneuver. Limitations are you're really only going to want to do this within, 200 meters, maybe 3 if you're fast and there's, plenty of cover between you and the bad guys, maybe micro terrain like small dips and hills and stuff like that. So number 1 and number 2, you're either going to receive contact, and contact is they're shooting at you, or you're going to observe them. Now the bad guys in this case, we're going to say it's a checkpoint of 2 dudes, okay? So they're just watching this area and kind of see what's going on. Maybe you caught them slipping and they didn't make contact with you first. So you don't really want to fire on these guys until you can get about close enough, to engage them effectively. We're also going to assume that you're not carrying around belt-fed machine guns. We're going to assume that, you're carrying around something like this, right? 16-inch rifle, maybe a magnified optic, maybe a red dot. This one's a little goofy looking, I get that. We're going to assume we're not carrying around something like this, okay? Now, this is not real. This is just a training aid. But we're going to assume we don't have belt-fed machine guns in this fight. And we're going to hope that these bad guys also don't have belt-fed machine guns in this fight. Because that would be really not good for you and your friend here, okay? I guess I lost my blue marker. Alright, so I found my blue marker. And now we're going to kind of get into what exactly is bounding. What the fuck is this guy talking about? So you're going to observe them, or you're going to take contact from them. In this situation, we're going to assume you take contact from these 2 guys. Now these 2 guys are already going to have you outnumbered when you're maneuvering in terms of firepower. They're going to have 2 guns to your 1 gun firing while you're maneuvering. Again, it's all, the name of the game is fire and maneuver. So these guys are going to start shooting at you because they see you. They're not asleep. They are not smoking and joking. They're paying attention and doing their jobs, which is, pretty rare, honestly, for bad guys, unless they're fresh onto the post, or, they got nothing better to do, or maybe it's some dickhead with a new guy. Anyways, we're going to assume they start firing on you. So you're both going to do what's called a mad minute. You're going to basically dump between 10 and 15 rounds on the bad guys. And then you're going to pick up what's called talking guns, okay? So number 1's going to fire, bang, bang. Then number 2's going to fire, bang, 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 bang. And you're going to talk guns. This does 2 things. 1, you're going to keep a constant rate of fire on these dudes. 2, you're not just going to be burning through your magazines of ammo. Now, once you get through about that 20, 30 rounds from your first mags, you're going to want to be like, you're going to want to make a decision. Hey, can we maneuver on these guys under fire can we possibly neutralize them? The answer to that is yes, we can maneuver on them under fire, and yes, we can probably neutralize them because we have really kick-ass cover and concealment pretty much right up to them. Then you're gonna start bounding. Now, you guys aren't gonna have telepathy, right? If you have radios, that's awesome. If you don't have radios, number one is simply gonna say to number two, hey, number two, I'm bounding up, cover me. And number two is gonna be like, roger that. So number two is going to know, hey, I have to pick up my rate of fire on these bad guys because number one's not going to be shooting anymore. So number one is going to bound up to his next piece of cover and concealment. Number two is going to keep going bang, 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 bang. Now you want to keep up a constant rate of fire, but you don't want to be just bang, 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 and then have to reload, because then number one's, you know, kind of got his ass out in the wind. So number two is going to keep up that constant bang, 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 just to give these guys enough to think about, fuck, I really don't want to poke my head out. Now, when you're shooting at these guys, and before you make that decision to bound, you're going to want to ask yourself and kind of get a feel for the situation, are these guys suppressed? Now, suppression is something that's talked about a lot, and really the name of the game is suppression is defined by the enemy's reaction to your incoming fire, okay? So you guys could be dumping belts of ammo, 7.62, 5.56, whatever, belts of ammo if you have a belt-fed machine gun, right? You could be dumping belts of ammos at these guys, and they could just still be standing straight up and shooting at you. Well, then they're not suppressed. Or you could have one guy just going bang, 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 and these dudes could keep their heads behind cover or try to poke out from a different area to get a shot on you. Now number two is going to want to switch up kind of where he's firing from, because he's going to be giving himself away a little bit, right? Anyways, I digress. So number one's going to bound up to his first piece of cover and concealment. Then he's going to start firing on the bad guys. Now this requires no communication verbally between number one and number two. Once number one starts firing on the bad guys, number two is going to know, cool, I'm covered, I can move now. So once number one starts firing, number two is going to bound up to his next piece of cover and concealment. Then once number two gets to his next piece of cover and concealment, number two is going to start firing on the bad guys and suppressing them, or attempting to, based on their reaction to your fire. Once number one sees number two bound up to his piece of cover and concealment, he's going to bound up to his next and start firing. Once number two sees number one get there, number two is going to bound up to his next and start firing. Now at this point, we're going to assume, that was pretty good, we're going to assume that these bad guys are either dead again, we're going to say there's two of them, we're going to assume they're either dead or they're pretty suppressed. And this is kind of your last point, kind of a final firing point, or your limit of advance, your LOA. Because anything past here, you can see there's no cover and concealment to these bad guys. Now, if this is 50 meters between you and these bad guys, I mean, that's not far when you're trading rounds. You should be able to neutralize them pretty effectively, unless they have way better cover and concealment, or, like I said, if they have belt-fed machine guns and they're just raining down belts of ammo on you. Then you're not even going to do this, okay? What you're going to do here, way back here, not bounding up, is you're going to do what's called breaking contact. And that's only if, when you start engaging these guys, or they start engaging you, they just start suppressing you, and you realize, we can't win this fight. We gotta get the fuck out of Dodge. So, for this example, we're going to assume number one and number two made it to their final firing point, or their limit of advance, and these guys had their friends show up. Now there's four of them. One of their friends bought a belt-fed machine gun. These guys are hammering on you and your buddy. So you're going to do what's called breaking contact. Now you're not retreating, so to speak. You're breaking contact. You're deciding, hey, we probably can't win this fight, so what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves out of this fight. You're not retreating, and it's not a machismo thing. You're not retreating as in you're not just turning tail and running away. You're deciding, hey, we're ending this engagement and we're going to have to do it in a way that we don't get ourselves killed. So number one's going to tell number two, hey, number two, I'm going to break contact and bound back. And number two is going to be like, roger that, buddy. So number one, instead of going this way, he's going to go this way. Once he picks up his fire point here, number two is going to bound back here. You kind of see where I'm going with this, right? So once number two bounds back and starts firing, number one's going to bound back and start firing again. Then number two is going to bound back again, right? Until you get here. Now, you can continue doing this all the way back until they stop shooting at you, or you feel like you're a safe enough distance away where there's no way these guys are going to be able to shoot you, whether there's thick vegetation, if you're in an urban setting, like another block, 2 blocks over. You have rocks if you're out in whatever rocky environment you're in, right? Or if you're just in thick, dense woods, which is kind of what we're assuming here, and this is just a check. Hopefully, you're keeping their minds occupied enough that you can, you know, get out of there safely. And if not, you're probably going to have a really rough day. So, firing maneuver, bounding, breaking contact. This also applies to a fire team. So you can have number 3, that's a shitty circle. Then number 3 and number 4. And you can do the same thing forward and in reverse. Now ideally, you want about a 3-to-1 ratio for your forces to their forces. If you have 4-to-2, that's a 2-to-1, right? Basic division, if elementary school helps me at all. 4-to-2 is 2-to-1. It's not ideally, you know, the 3-to-1 ratio to be 6-to-2, or like I said, 3-to-1. But 4-to-2 with guys like this, with just carbines, you're gonna probably be able to win that. 4-to-4, that's 1-to-1. It's not every time you're gonna be able to win that. 2-to-2, it's another 1-to-1. Probably not gonna be able to win that 100% of the time, but if you can get really accurate shots on these guys, maybe take one out of the fight right away, and then it's 2-to-1. Pretty good odds. Maybe that guy's trying to render aid to his buddy while also returning fire. Ideally, you don't want to do any types of fire and maneuver on enemy or bad guys, right? Without that 3-to-1 ratio. Just gives you that overwhelming force. It's going to give them a hell of a lot more people to shoot at. It's going to give a hell of a lot more rounds on these guys from your team. 2-to-2, a 1-to-1 ratio. You can get away with it, but it's not ideal. If you catch them slacking, sleeping, not paying attention, you know, you kind of realize that, you can probably get them. Now, if you catch them slacking, what you don't want to do is start firing from back here. You're going to want to still bound up, and all you're going to be doing is what's called pulling security, right? So pulling security is you're just maintaining eyes on those guys while your buddy moves, and then your buddy's going to maintain eyes on them while you move. Now this is going to require a more visual form of communication rather than verbal. What I mean by that is when number 1 gets here, number 2 is going to have to see that number 1 gets here, or number 1 is going to tell number 2, hey, number 2, I'm set, you're covered, you're good to move, something along those lines. I'm set, you're good to move. Number 2 is going to move, and he's going to tell number 1, roger that, I'm moving. Number 2 is going to move, and number 2 is going to be like, hey, number 1, I'm set, you're good to move. Number 1 is then going to move. Number 2 is going to probably see him if you're close enough. And number 1 is going to tell number 2 again, hey, number 2, I'm set, you're good to move. Number 2, roger, I'm moving. All the way up. And then once you can get, you know, shots on those guys, ideally you're close enough where you can just put 3 to 5 rounds out there and take them out. In a perfect world. If you start taking contact back here and you have to actually bound up and get to them, you're going to be in a world of hurt, even if it's 2-on-2, because they have a defensive position that you're trying to maneuver on. Again, ideally you want that 3-to-1 ratio, and realistically, unless you're operating with a full-size squad taking on a checkpoint like this, you know, checkpoints most of the time have some kind of belt fed because they know that they're in a defensive posture, so they're going to try to defend this as best they can. That pretty much covers everything from bounding, breaking contact, fire and maneuver, and the limitations of it. The limitations of it are really distance and manpower. So you're going to want to make a decision based off of how far away you either start taking contact or how many dudes you have, right? So the limitations of bounding with 2 guys up to the bad guys, if you have 2 guys against 2 guys, not a good fight. You can win it. You can. Especially if you have really good shot placement and you're able to take one of them out of the fight quick. The other limitation, again, is distance. You start bounding up like this, you guys are going to start running out of ammo if you're supporting each other while moving. If it's 600, 800 meters, that's a half mile. Not only are you going to be super winded and out of gas, but you're also going to want to make sure you have enough ammo to actually finish the fight. Because if you get up here and you and number 2 only have 1 mag left, that's not good. Then you're going to start breaking contact, and you're going to have to start breaking contact with pretty much no ammo. You're going to be black on ammo. Just not something you want to get into. So, limitations, distance, and size of your friendly forces against the enemy forces. So again, bounding, you're just leapfrogging up. Breaking contact, you're just leapfrogging back. Fire and maneuver. All of this is fire and maneuver. Someone's firing, someone's maneuvering. It's the whole concept right there. Fire and maneuver. Everything pretty much boils down to fire and maneuver. Someone wants to be shooting at the bad guys while someone else maneuvers on them. When you're getting into the flat range shooting, you're standing most guys you see on Instagram, YouTube, right? And this isn't a dig at them. I greatly improved my shooting skills based on watching these guys on flat ranges. They're standing anywhere from 10 to 100, 150 meters away, straight up, sometimes with cover, sometimes with no cover, and they're just dumping rounds at these guys. That's going to get you killed 100% of the time. Does it build shooting foundations? Absolutely. If you're able to stand straight up and dump 3 to 5 rounds on a guy, and hit those rounds, well, then you're taking a guy out of the fight, and you're greatly improving your odds of getting out of there and actually taking this. And if you're in, I don't want to say insurgent, but if you're in an end of the world scenario, and these are, an organized gang that set up a checkpoint, they might have stuff that you can take. Ammo, weapons, food, water, medical equipment, communications equipment. So, all these things, these tactics outside of a flat range, you don't have to do them with weapons or live ammo even. I would greatly recommend that you don't start off with live ammo because you're shooting and moving, and that's a little hairy right off the bat with people that aren't fully understanding of the concepts based on, firing and maneuvering. You're going to have to make sure you're not pointing your weapon at your buddy. If you take your buddy out of the fight, that's not good. Again, what I would do to train this is I get you and your buddy, and really, all it takes is 10-15 minutes, and you can even go to a park or a public sidewalk. You're going to use tactics all the time. You use tactics in driving. All this stuff applies in everyday life, not just in an end of the world scenario or some kind of scenario where you have to defend your life and the lives of your buddies. So hopefully this helps. Again, major points that I want to drive home: bounding, breaking contact, fire and maneuver, and the limitations of bounding and breaking contact. The limitations, again, I know I've said this probably 4 times now. Distance is the big one, and then size of your force compared to the size of their force is the other big one. You don't want to get into a fight that you're outgunned in. Ideally, you want to bring 3 guys to their 1 guy. So yeah, if you like that, follow for more. I'll be going over Battle Drill 1 or Squad Attack. In another video, I'll be going over some more fire and maneuver stuff. I'll be going over weapon setups, some recon stuff, even though that's not really what I did, just some basic concepts that a guy on Instagram called Counting Coup Tactical went over in terms of recce rifles and recce setups. which is all good stuff, and it's all, you know, really useful information to have. But anyways, so yeah, other videos will be covering that. This is just bounding, breaking contact, fire and maneuver, the bare minimum of fire and maneuver. So if you like that, stay tuned for more.